Welcome to the next edition of Priestess Mercury. We'll begin with a grounding invocation. I welcome you to close your eyes as well if you're able, as we call upon the north, the east, the south, and the west, earth, air, fire, and water, and all of our angels, ancestors, and allies, the Priestess Mercury channel through Matt and I, and all the support for all listening, grounding us in our bodies, in the soul, in the center of Gaia, in the center of the galaxy, in the center of the universe, in the center of oneness, in the center of the smallest single cell bacteria, all the way up, all the way down. May the words flow, the message be clear, and may we all find ourselves present, clear, and here. So mote it be.
So mote it be. So today we're recording on Monday, May the 10th at 11:58 a.m. Here on the West Coast in Seattle. And we've got a lot going on this month. Astrologically speaking, we've got a new moon tomorrow, which is the last of the moon cycles before we hit the next set of eclipses, which the first one kicks off on May 26th, which will be a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. And you know, this year, these eclipses, this is the last of the eclipses we'll be having in Gemini and Sagittarius. The nodes will be moving on to Taurus and Scorpio. And, you know, we'll be back in the fall to talk about that transition because it'll be a big one. But right now, you know, we want to talk about this new moon in Taurus. It's got a lot of connection to the outer planets. It's, you know, loosely conjunct Uranus. It's very tight sextile to Neptune. And a trine to Pluto and a square to Jupiter. So there's a lot going on with this moon coming up. It's a new moon, so you know this is going to be the seed of something that is going forward for the next month. And you know, at the end of a cycle, you know, this is like the last chapter in a book in a certain sense. So.
The last chapter and the foundation for the eclipse, full moon, all the energy that we're coming into starting at the end of May. Mercury will also be going retrograde at the end of May as well. So it's like we're heading into I feel like with eclipse season, we're like heading into the funnel. Mm-hmm. Like heading into, because the eclipse seasons that happen every year, they're like activation portals. They bring that change and the fresh energy. The nodes switching are going to bring new collective lessons. So it's like we're moving into all of that. And Matt and I were talking about how this new moon really feels like the setup for that, the foundation for that. Mm-hmm. And in terms of its connections to Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter, we also wanted to talk about Jupiter going into Pisces.
Yeah, that'll be a big shift for a lot of people.
Yeah, and for a brief minute till about July, then it'll retrograde back into familiar Aquarius, semi-familiar, it hasn't been that long, until Pisces again, much later. But anyway, that this new moon, we were talking about how the Taurus energy that we were feeling, we did our own readings, and we were noticing because of that trine to Pluto and sextile to Neptune, there was an emphasis on Taurus as the firmness of Taurus, and that a lot of people associate Taurus with the Venusian qualities of the decadence and the sensual and everything physical that's like sensual and beautiful and Venusian. we were noticing that Taurus was speaking to us through our readings and more like this firm, like Taurus fix, like this is how it's going to be, really setting that firm. And I also want to add into that Taurian firmness, Matt, that, I went to the dentist this morning and I was having the thought of, oh, this is Taurus too, like getting your body in check or areas that need to be cleaned or detoxed, or versus the more Venusian part of the body, feeling more the Pluto aspect, where it's like letting go of toxins, mental, emotional, physical, that Pluto is asking us to let go. And as we were talking, that this sextile with Neptune, as you were saying, Matt, that sextile is like stoking the fires of the new moon, like bringing in this Neptunian, your highest spiritual good, your highest spiritual intention, the way that you connect spiritually in your own way, however that is, giving you that Taurian firmness to stand true in your intentions, your beliefs, wherever Taurus is in your chart, as we're also all letting go with that Pluto aspect.
Yeah, and one of the things I would probably lead off as we're jumping into this is to note that because these are sextiles and trines, we've been talking about a lot of heavy energy, and a lot of squares where you have to make choices and decisions and you feel under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of transformational work that's happening, but it's also like stuff that is kind of with the flow of the narrative that's been going. So you're getting this transformation, but it's more, and in a way, it's like, this is the message you've been getting, and you've got it, is kind of how this is working. Just keep with it, keep at it.
Plugging away. Like that aspect of Taurus too. Hold the boat steady, keep steady. I know for myself, after my reading, I did not want to see that message. I think a lot of us are anxious for change in a positive direction. We've been holding a lot, learning a lot of lessons. There hasn't been a lot of Venusian decadence or bright new chapters. A lot of it has been tumultuous change, which will continue. And just that reminder that the Uranus Saturn square is the whole year. Back to that episode. But
yeah, we'll be back there in a month. Again.
But like how you're saying, Matt, that this new moon is really it almost feels, as we're hashing this out right now, like a recommitment, a rededication to the intentions you've been making the whole year, to the intentions that are already in place, but that recommitment, which can also be Taurus as well, like a married couple that has another ceremony 10 years later or whatever, like this ritual to really reaffirm.
Right.
And then
it is reaffirming a lot of what's been going on, and also just keeping in mind that this is moving us toward that this next set of eclipses. That's where we'll see a lot of the transformation that comes out of this will show up within a month, as things start to get heavy again, but hopefully in a way that you're stepping into a new chapter, in a way that feels more grounded, in a way,
grounded in your intentions, right? Grounded in your inner tree trunk that you've built with your conscious intentions and the hard work of all the letting go you've been doing. That's that anchor, as the eclipse does bring the actual change that's showing up in the physical that you have felt coming, that we all have felt coming. And how that's like that every year with the eclipses. And also how Matt's saying that we're going to be switching nodes. We've been, and I'll just say it real brief so we can stick with a task, but we've been very much in Gemini, Sagittarius, where the big collective lesson has been around the mind. And then it's going to go more into Taurus, Scorpio, and it's going to switch to being more about the resources, soul,
the body too.
Soul and body. Yeah, the resources being body, money, exchanges externally, Taurus, and then Scorpio being the resource of the soul, the resource of deep relationships and the soul. That's really the Scorpio end. And just, it's really kind of that exchange of the resource, you know, and where we're sourcing. So there's going to be a big shift out of the mind. And that collectively, as the eclipses wrap up, a Gemini, Sagittarius, like very mental focus, where it's been for how long now? Have we been in these?
Well, the nodes spend about 18 months, a year and a half in the sign polarities. So, and they take about 18, 19 years to get around the entire wheel.
Yeah, and as you were sharing last night, Matt, that the solar eclipse after the lunar will still be a Gemini solar eclipse, but it's not going to be as impactful because the nodes will have switched, and it's going to be like, well, so
they won't quite have switched. The nodes will be at like 1 degree of Gemini at that point. I went and double checked my math.
So just to keep it simple for the listeners, how impactful will the solar eclipse? The lunar is going to be very impactful. It feels like enter the rabbit hole. Like, is the solar eclipse going to be as powerful? That comes.
Yes. Well, the new moon part of the solar eclipse is actually going to happen in late Taurus, and then that node will be in Gemini. So there'll be a little bit of a breather from the collective lesson. So there'll probably be more of a personal impact in a way with that solar eclipse. This happens every time we get close to shifting the nodes into a different set of signs, that you get a little overlap. And when that happens, you often find that there's more of an internal personal lesson that might not necessarily be translate very collectively.
Yeah, so when we get there, we'll go more into that. And when we get to the lunar eclipse and full moon in Sagittarius next podcast, we'll get more into that. And now coming full circle back to the new moon, let's reaffirm our commitment and our dedication. Taurus. So you want to look where Taurus is in your chart, and that's where you want to make that commitment. Mine's right on my IC, right on my soul, the part that represents how you anchor home in the soul.
Right. The foundations, like what you find security in.
Yeah, what you find security in, and on a more mundane level, that can be like your home or your sense of home. On a more depth, esoteric level, it's the soul is home.
Yeah, it's your holy no too. That's it's the bottom of the chart. It's like what is the bottom line for you? Where do you not budge anymore? What's the
holy no, the
end of it?
No.
The sacred no.
Also read, this is my channel, as we always encourage you to find your channel. I read the IC as the anima or animus. The inner opposite of the sex of your body, or if you're not into that, how do we talk about it? Because this isn't about gender.
Well,
I'm trying to understand how to.
Well, think of it as the anima being the receptive qualities, kind of like we would think of as not the sex feminine, but the kind of larger psychological principle of the feminine.
Let's just say yin and yang.
Yeah, yin yang are another. These things are like loosely correlated, but they do for a reason.
Here's the simple way to look at it. If you don't, it came from the male body, and the female body has the polar opposite invisible body on the inside. A male body has an inner female, a female body has an inner male. So whatever you identify with is the opposite. So even if you identify with not identifying. If you're fluid, then maybe your inner opposite is not fluid. Maybe your inner opposite is very exact of something. Like, it's the main thing to understand. This is Jungian, and the main principle of the depth in the Jungian is that we are whole. What we present as externally has its opposite internally. That's the main thing to understand. And that and that the I read that as that internal source point.
Right. And that's why the mirror becomes like an image for what we're talking about here, because when you look at yourself in the mirror, the picture that gets brought back to you is flipped around from what someone else who would be looking at you would see.
And how your own ego sees yourself. So when you're looking at the IC, the way I read it, the MC is how I see myself. I have a Scorpio MC. I'm a Scorpio sun, Midheaven. So I see myself as very Scorpio, and I present that way. I'm super esoteric and deep. I'm a therapist, tarot, astrology. I wear black. It just doesn't get more Scorpio. So inside, the opposite, the I see, my animus is Taurus. And I've done my own visualizing because I'm a cis female identified. My opposite, my animus is feels very like cis masculine. I've seen him as a seaman alone on the sea, sturdy, like a Taurus, a sturdy, steady loner guy. That is very logical, because my external me is very intuitive. So the animus is totally logical. My Midheaven, my external self, is very psychic and spiritual. This part inside of me feels very reason, logic, nature. Kind of reminds me of Darwin on his adventures on the sea, wanting to study life. Still as deep and investigative as the top half of me, the outer half of me, but more of the Taurus level of things, like scientific and nature. So that you might resonate with the if you have Taurus in your 4th house or on your IC, as well as being your inner opposite. That's going to be for the select few. And a good way to know offhand, if you don't have your chart, that it would be your rising sign. It would be how many out?
It would be 4. You're dividing the chart by 4, so you have your rising sign is your 1st house. Your 4th house is, so like mine, I'm Aries rising, so my 4th house is Cancer.
So you have a Cancer IC and a Capricorn Midheaven, which I can totally attest, as knowing Matt when he's one of my best friends, that you definitely have this outer Capricornian self, and I feel your inner Cancer, the inner self, that's so nurturing and attuning and comforting.
Well, it's been a process of learning to grow accustomed to that, because for instance, as a cis male in this particular society, I got a lot of messages about what I'm supposed to be as that particular manifestation, and that is to not be emotional, to get things done, to fix everything. And that those things can be great, those Capricornian ambitious collective problem solving kind of traits. But I had, in my 30s, and I had to start learning how to open up to that, the inner feminine, and start to learn how to listen. And I didn't really realize I wasn't doing that so well before, but it was like, having these moments where you start to learn to embrace something that's not easy for you, that feels so out of whack because it goes against like what you've
identify with and what the cultural narrative has taught you as well.
Yeah. Or what I've been identified with. I think that's one of the big things. Yeah.
I mean, and so it's no matter if you're like, Matt and I happen to be classic sort of mundane cis people. So we can't speak firsthand, but whatever, if you are not cis, you're basically marginalized, and the cultural narrative, basically you're going to be raised struggling to be yourself. So when you understand that there's that part in your midheaven, in your outer self, and in your rising sign, you know, how has your familial and cultural upbringing brainwashed you? Let's just come out and say it, because we all know that there's a lot of toxicity, and that the IC down at the bottom of the chart right there is a secret key to understanding not only who you are in your opposite, whether you fall in a marginalized or non or privileged position within the culture, that both privileged and marginalized have been given a cultural narrative that is not correct,
right,
that is not authentic, you know, and that is a layer on top of the layer that just naturally, which what Jung was talking about, we shadow a lot of ourselves. A lot of it's the cultural narrative and familiar upbringing, but also our psyches just naturally do that too, that there's going to be the opposite invisible, and it's getting to know your inner self as much as your outer self. So there are those couple layers, and how the IC and midheaven, and then the rising sign and the descendant can be keys to that.
Right. And part of what Jung was often talking about was how, these roles that are given to us as we're growing up, and this conditioning, sometimes, what we're doing is learning how to undo that. So we're learning how not to be put in those categories, and that's part of collectively what. So a lot of,
I mean, that's the whole key of the IC. That's I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you unlock the IC and the descendant, these are kind of the inner self. Like my inner self is a Taurus Leo, and I have to say that I've never identified with any Taurus Leo traits. But since doing shadow work and discovering animus and shadow, I now identify heavily with both. I definitely have uncovered the Leo part of me that just wants to be like, look at me, world, look at my stuff, look at me, and also identify the stoic explorer on the ship that wants to study sea life, like metaphorically speaking. And now I identify with these aspects like Darwin and Madonna or something, like that the me that hadn't done that work yet would have been like poo-pooing either projection, like, oh, you're just showing off because I haven't integrated my own desire to be a show off, or like, oh, I'm so just not logic, reason, science, and like poo-pooing it, so the IC and the descendant can be keys.
And that can often be a good starting point for recognizing where the shadow work starts is when you catch yourself poo-pooing things. It's like, oh, wait, maybe I need to sit with this and figure out what's going on here. Why am I being, because really what we're doing when we're poo-pooing stuff is we're being dismissive, even though we don't intend to be. And
because that's what the dismission, that's the word. Dismission. Anyway,
the dismissiveness,
the dismissiveness is how you're unconsciously shadowing. You could be dismissive, you could be flippant, you could be super judgmental. These are three ways the ego is basically saying, I'm not looking inside, I'm not looking inside, nope, not safe, not good, not doing it. So instead, I'm just going to judge you, judge that, judge this, dismiss it, or be flippant about it, not respect it, not honor it, so that I can just not look inside and see that this is in me in some degree.
Right.
So that's the I feel.
It's also a very Taurus kind of thing too, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like whatever your IC is, I read charts this way now. Is I always look to the IC as the inner opposite, the main soul opposite of the ego identification. So persona is the midheaven, anima animus is the IC, ego is the rising, shadow is the descendant. In the Jungian terms of it, that's how I read So that whole diatribe,
Mhm.
if Taurus or Pluto, or Pluto's in Capricorn, Taurus, new moon in Taurus, or Neptune in Pisces, if any of those are on your IC or Descendant, could be a call to.
Yeah, really on any of your angles, the ascendant, descendant, IC, midheaven, because you're
Yeah,
going to be dealing with the opposite either way because the way the polarities work. So,
right. Yeah, that you can, and again, these are just my channels where the rising feels more like ego and the midheaven feels more like persona, which are
mhm.
very similar. The rising sign is kind of more general umbrella outer personality, whereas the midheaven is more, I like how you said last night, curated. I keep hearing that word, and like a more curated version of your like general outer personality. It's focused more on either career or like what you want to give or do or contribute.
Well, yeah, it's what I tend to, when I'm talking with clients, I'll talk about the midheaven and the 10th house as being uh, what you get recognized for. So what do people see? What do people see about you? And some of that changes over time as things transit through there. But
Yeah, it always changes. Everything's changing over time. But yeah, I like that. That's like kind of what you're recognized for. Because
and
the same
yeah, and
career
the
is a little bit.
IC, yeah, the IC is like what you wish people would recognize you for in a way. So there's that polarity pulling against each other, so that you
See,
wish you could see the things like that.
I don't feel that for me. I feel like my IC is more like what I need to learn to see about myself and integrate. I don't wish people could see me as Taurus, but I feel like I feel that more with the Descendant. But again,
Hmm.
for me it's more wanting to see it myself,
Hmm.
so I think that's going to depend on person to person. Maybe you wish others would see it in you, because that might be your experience. Maybe you want to see it more in yourself. It's just the unintegrated
Hmm.
parts of you that are on that IC line and fourth house, and then the seventh house and what rules the seventh house. And that's really going to give you big keys to what needs integrating. And that if the new moon is falling on that for you, like it is for me, um, now that we've talked about all this, after last night's reading, I kind of understand, oh, I need to be this Taurus man,
Hmm.
not the Scorpio woman right now. And it's like, oh, it kind of clicks into place
Hmm.
that this stoic, logical, curious, reason oriented Taurus man in me knows how to get through the next month. Whereas the fluid Scorpio feminine in me doesn't. She's not going to do too well the next month. So it's kind of forcing me to develop more of the hidden
Your
self.
sea legs.
My sea legs. Yeah. So if the new moon is falling on your Descendant or IC, it might be a call to develop and activate these hidden parts of yourself, these shadowed parts.
Hmm.
And the new moon for you, Matt, is where?
It's in my second house.
That's right.
Pretty pretty close to my natal Jupiter. So, and I've been going through a lot of these lessons about trying to embrace the big picture and the optimism, even when things don't look so optimistic, and to hold my own dignity. That's another lesson with Jupiter too. So, this new
Yeah.
moon is kind of bringing a lot of those things back. For me, is like I see these what the cards say, and everything seems like, okay, we're here again. Let's keep plugging away. Um, but
Holding firm your intentions.
yeah, don't let things slide, which is a tendency I have sometimes, is to just let it slide and it'll come. We'll come back to it again later, but
Right,
I'm
very
getting tired of
Sagittarius.
coming back to it again later. So it's time to stand in it.
That's what Matt and I were feeling about this Taurus vibe. Yeah, because your Aries Sagittarius could let slide, save it for later, trust luck, do all that fiery stuff. And the Taurus is like, no, you need to actually reinstate your intentions and communicate and stay firm in them. And, I feel that for myself too, where the Scorpio wants to self-destruct, burn it to the ground, find the magic, make it super magical, something scorpionic. It's like, I need to do the Taurus thing. Like, no, it's not about, it's just like, be on your ship on the sea and do what you got to do. And my Taurus man too, he's stocky, he's like a stocky dude, it's like salty and stocky.
Arg.
Very, very arg, but not like, but he's more, quiet and refined in a way. He's not like, a pirate by any means. Not like that. He's not like fiery. So where Pluto is where the letting go needs to happen in your chart. Like for me, it's 12th house. So I'm letting go of a lot of multi-generational wounds. And, I set up my 4-pack with my Reiki healer. And the first session I had yesterday was all about an ancestral wound showing up to be released. So that makes perfect sense that these ancestral patterns are kind of what's been holding me back in the feminine bloodline. So what about you, Matt? Where's Pluto in your chart?
It's in my 10th house. So it has a lot to do with, what we were just talking about a second ago about the, how am I being perceived by others? And in particular, like, dealing with how do I, my authority, my sense of authority.
Authority.
And, trying to rest in the authority, so I'm not like trying to wrestle for it all the time.
Yeah, rest in authority. So in a way, Pluto's asking you to let go of the struggle with authority.
Yeah, and the inner authority in particular, like
right, to just be your own leader. Firm, Taurus firm. And that's again what Matt and I keep feeling with this Taurus 5 this time around, is the firmness of it, the steadiness of it, not so much the, laying in the, I always think of Cleopatra on her bard with her fruits, just not that kind of Taurus, and not the Taurus that's like the big bull that's like, I'm gonna ruin the China and the China stuff, but more like, just the firm and steady presence that doesn't budge no matter what's happening, a firm and steady presence. And then and then Neptune, for me, this is where we're getting stoked, like the help from oneness, stoking. So for me, that's in the 2nd house, which is kind of weird. Such a weird Neptune placement, because Neptune is like the spiritual oneness, and the 2nd house is the physical resources. But I guess my physical resources are all spiritual. I mean, my work is, I get paid for doing spiritual work. I'm covered in spiritual materials. Everything I got, like my tinctures, my oils. It's like I'm kind of surrounded in that 2nd house resource is all like spiritual. So maybe that's saying that my work with clients and all of my tools and magical offerings and supplies is the stoking, is like keeping me going. And where's Neptune for you?
In the 12th house.
Ooh, so that's like archetypal, which reminds me of all of the work you've been doing with like your necklace. And I don't know if you want to I don't know if you want to share anything.
This is a great little talisman for the fixed star Vega. So the vulture here with Lyra is the constellation Lyra, and Vega is the like the throat chakra in that constellation. So I've been working on getting in touch with these kind of planetary energies, the fixed stars, and some of that's been dealing with a lot of intergenerational shit.
Yeah, it's
I'll be quite honest. So
you're using the archetypes of the 12th house in a very magical way, very intentional and magical, to purify and release the ancestral wounding and multi-generational patterns that are also 12th house. So Neptune, that's interesting that Neptune's where Pluto is for me. So it's kind of two versions of that 12th house work, whereas Neptune is probably in the 12th house for you, giving you a lot of expansion through your magical ritual work.
Yeah, well, and it's also, well, there's that myth of Orpheus. I mean, this is the Lyra is the Lyra of Orpheus, who went to the underworld to try and save Eurydice and failed. Made it to the underworld and got out, but did not bring his beloved back. And so there's a lot about, going down into the depths and, dealing with disappointment and not getting what you want, and being okay with that.
Yeah, doing the 12th house work is always about going to the deepest underworld. The 8th house is the personal shadow, and the 12th house is the multi-generational, ancestral, collective shadow where all the archetypes live as well. And when you have anything going in that house or anything natally there, you're very connected to those lands, that land, and that sometimes you do retrieve a great love and bring it back, an aspect of self. Sometimes you let it go when you're down there and you don't.
Yeah, or you let go of the external things that you thought you wanted.
Yeah, you let go of the external things that you thought you wanted. I mean, every underworld journey is different. For those of you who have like a Aquarius or late Capricorn rising, you've had Pluto in your 12th house for a long time. Anyone with like, I don't know how late Capricorn degree, but it's intense because I've had Pluto in the 12th house forever. And until 2026, when you're late Capricorn, early Aquarius rising, Pluto, and then, Pluto is going to go into your first house, which is its own version of wherever Pluto is a lot. Neptune brings a lot of beautiful, I think, this beautiful spiritual expansion if you connect to it. If you don't connect to your Neptune, where it's at, you're going to use it. You're going to go into escapism, drugs, alcohol, food, sex, attention. You're just going to like Jim Morrison it, and it's going to be more destructive. And then Taurus would probably then just be all the physical things you're doing to destroy. And then Pluto would just be the final end you create through your escapist, self-destructive tendencies. Like the shadow, right? The shadow is you're not going to grow or change at all. You're just going to spend the next month intoxicated on whatever your Neptunian escape is, and then reaching the same bottom you've already reached. That would be the shadow.
Right.
So it can, you have to use the opportunity to work the magic, or like to use these energies to grow and evolve and heal, versus just follow kind of the influences of fate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fate is going to get you wherever you're at. But it's about opening up to your participation in the narrative.
I mean, the way I see it, my definition is there's fate and there's destiny. Fate is what happens to you when you're not conscious and you're not consciously creating, healing, growing, evolving. Destiny is what you step into once you are. And that every choice we make is another parallel reality, is another, we can't understand the sacred math behind it all of how our consciousness is in the parallel reality it's in, because it's way bigger than we can comprehend. But what you can just understand fabulistically is that every choice you make puts you in a new reality.
Right.
And if you don't make the choices, or if you just let fate carry you, that's your right. There's no judgment. Again, like the oneness does not judge. It's not like you better do this or there's going to be consequences that are bad. And that might be the case where your lack of choice leads you to the same consequences, or consequences that don't feel good, but not because you're bad,
Right.
not because there's an external judge, but just because that's what happens when there's not growth. You just repeat.
Right. Well, I mean, you're leaving yourself up to the capriciousness in a way of fate. And you're less, there's a lot of control in how we accept the things that come to us. And I don't mean that as in like the positivity police kind of thing, but there is a way of
Serenity prayer, Matt. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's accepting, some of what I can't control. And trying to recognize where I do have more and more control, and stepping into it. And it's a continual process.
It's that discernment is very Capricornian where Pluto is. And I think maybe that this aspect, I feel Pluto speaking to me now as you bring this aspect up, that like the serenity prayer, universe, give me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, and know the difference. It's like that discernment is knowing the difference. What do I need to accept and what can I change? And that discernment is very Capricornian. It's really being able to look at the situation for what it is and really assess, like, do I need to accept this? Like, okay, at the dentist this morning, I had to accept that I have to be there every 4 months forever because of my gums receding and what that's causing. So it's like, the only change I can make is to make sure I get to the dentist every 4 months.
Right.
But I can't, I have to surrender and be like, all right, that's, like.
Yeah, I mean, you could keep skipping the dentist, but then you'll be back at the dentist anyway.
Well, and that's where fate, and that's the thing, is like when you don't make the changes that you can make because of anxiety, fear, or whatever block is there, you're just going to repeat, or your teeth are just going to decay and fall out, or you're going to just have this outcome that isn't going to feel good, isn't going to be in your benefit.
Right.
But
when you keep putting it off, you keep coming back to it.
Gosh, I'm so glad I mentioned the dentist again, because that just highlighted another aspect of, like, I did put it off through COVID and then a little bit longer, and I probably wouldn't have had to do the deep cleaning again had I not waited so long. But the reason why I waited so long is because I was afraid. And instead of facing my fear, I gave into my fear. This is a very familiar pattern for me. This is ancestral. It's Pluto 12th house. Both of my parents are high level fear. I think probably down the bloodlines. Fear, not an adventurous, bold bloodline,
Right. And we live in a very fearful culture. Like, you don't really have to look very far to see how afraid everyone is all the time. So
it's in the culture, but I really feel it in this 12th house way, in the ancestral. Like, the fear that I naturally have always had is not mine. It's the bloodlines. And I've spent my whole life victim to it. In my youth, when I had severe anxiety and PTSD. As an adult, I've healed from those things, but now I have this huge consequence from being afraid of the dentist. And like, the whole theme has been facing fear. And I'm just making the connection now that this is ancestral because of the Pluto 12th house, and so the wisdom to know the difference. If it's fear, you got to face it, in the right amount for me, So it's really powerful where Pluto is and working with Pluto, because it's like, and then connecting it with my stoic inner man, my Taurus inner man. He is not afraid, this guy. Like, he is so stoic and strong, and like not strong in, the patriarchal point. He's not like insensitive and, removed from feeling. He's just, this is what it is. Face it. Just put one foot in front of the other. and you'll
Yep.
get through it just like I do. Just like when I spent 3 years on the sea all by myself, studying the patterns of the sky,
Hmm.
like that's how it's working. Pluto is like showing you, where your fears, anxieties, roadblock, where all, blocks are always fear and anxiety,
Right.
essentially. So wherever Pluto is in your chart, that house that it's in and what it's aspecting is really showing you what you need to let go of, how you need to walk through. And sometimes letting go, like for me, letting go is facing fear. For Matt, letting go is being a firm inner authority.
Mm-hmm.
So letting
Well,
go.
it involves a little bit of facing fear too, but yeah, it's
Yeah, well, I guess
definitely,
fear is always at the root, right?
yeah.
So for you, it's facing fear and holding firm in your authority. For me, it's facing fear and taking these steps.
Hmm.
And maybe that's the second house part with Neptune for me too, with the body. All that body stuff is so scary, like
Hmm.
teeth, gums, bones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the houses that Saturn rules often tend to bring up fear as well as the other things in the houses, because
Right, that's good to note.
yeah,
Whatever house Saturn rules.
which would
So
be wherever Capricorn and Aquarius are in your
yeah,
chart,
whatever
pretty
house,
much.
yeah, Capricorn Aquarius is where there's going to be more of that karmic fear.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's so now as we've hashed this out a lot more, like we're really kind of succinctly getting to the root of like this new moon is about firmly facing fear and doing the thing you're afraid of. And
Hmm.
that the spiritual stoking, that spirit is with you. However you see spirit, God, goddess, Jesus, universe, nature, being, it doesn't matter. It's the transpersonal, whatever is beyond the self. That
Hmm.
part can nourish you right now, can bring ease, can bring grace, can bring nourishment, can just help you like face.
Yeah. Well, and it can also, invigorate that firmness
Yeah.
that you're dealing with in Taurus, that's getting awakened by this kind of spiritual uh, connection that Neptune represents.
I think also like the way that invigoration, I think for me is the same thing as nourishment. I think for me, nurturing is invigorating,
Hmm. Yeah,
uh,
it is.
versus maybe a more like, go get him, tiger, or like
Well, I
whatever.
mean, if you think about how food works, that's really what it does. It like invigorates the body, it breaks apart and goes to feed the different parts of the body. So it is a pretty intense uh, biological process.
Yeah, so if you think about Neptune doing that to our souls right now, to like our life path right now, it's helping us metabolize the struggle, and that the
Mhm,
struggle is actually the grist,
mhm,
and the struggle is rooted in Pluto's house. For
mhm,
Matt, it's authority. For me, it's these ancestral wounds. The firmness needed is where the Taurus part is.
mhm,
For Matt, it's in your physical resources and with Jupiter and staying expansive there. And for me, it's this Taurus man inside of me,
mhm,
and which is actually a huge part of me that I need to bring up from the shadow. And then Neptune, wherever that is where you're getting the metabolizing help. So
mhm.
for me, it's in the physical resources. And um, where's your Neptune? I just blinked. Where's Neptune?
12th house.
Oh, right. So for you, it's your magic work. And
Mhm,
that's and that now makes sense, that when we simmer that down to like facing fear and
mhm.
holding firm, that's what we need. It feels like going up the roller coaster,
Right.
and that as soon as we hit that full moon, it's going down for the ride.
Right. Well, and with the new moon, this new moon is setting a couple of stages. I mean, setting the stage for the eclipse season ending, but probably most importantly, which we haven't talked about yet, and we see if we
Oh,
can squeeze it in here at the
Jupiter.
end. But Jupiter is squaring the new moon. Jupiter is in the last degree of Aquarius, Jupiter is going to be giving that Neptune a supercharge over the next few months. And Jupiter traditionally was seen as the ruler of Pisces. So even in the modern sense, now you're getting both the traditional and more modern rulers of Pisces are going to be at home.
Yeah,
So
Pisces was first ruled by Jupiter and then by Neptune. They're going to be together now through July. As when, and May 13th, is that when it moves into Pisces out of the last?
May 12th. So it'll be Wednesday as this is airing pretty much
Okay.
on YouTube and the
Okay.
podcast.
So as you're listening to this, Jupiter's going into Pisces, supercharging Neptune, supercharging the Pisces attributes.
Right. And if you think about it, like the if you've been feeling like you're in a car where someone's driving with both the foot on the gas and the foot on the brake at the same time, that's probably been this influence of having Saturn and Jupiter together in Aquarius at the same time. And now Jupiter is going to get its own like fresh injection of dignity and bring that expansiveness.
That's what she said. Sorry.
More bring that expansiveness, the fullness of the benefits that Jupiter has to bring will be accessible. So it'll probably feel a lot less like you're kind of taking a step forward, taking a step back, taking a step forward.
And to explain that, the reason why it's the brake and the gas pedal same time is because Saturn and Jupiter are like opposite. Saturn's like, this is what holds you back. Jupiter's like, this is forward, auspicious, great, easy movement. So they're side by side. It's like, am I moving forward or am I moving back? I can't tell.
Right.
And then the fresh injection, Jupiter gets to be free of Saturn and be in its own ruling sign. Have its own ruling sign and planet. The original, and I love how Jupiter's originally Pisces is originally. Wait, I'm getting dyslexic.
Yes, Jupiter's originally the seen as the ruler of Pisces.
Yeah,
and along with Sagittarius, both of the highly spiritual signs in a way.
Yeah, it's so cool that as we know that Jupiter is all about expansion and luck, that its original ruler with Pisces is saying through spiritual connection, through that oneness, that all one, forgiveness, acceptance, unconditional love, forgiveness, acceptance, unconditional love, forgiveness, acceptance, unconditional love, forgiveness, acceptance, unconditional love will never fail to expand you, will never fail to give you luck, will never fail to help you move forward with grace and ease. It will always work. It may not look like how you think, because the ego always wants a specific cookie. But if you give unconditional love instead of conditional love, you give acceptance instead of resistance.
Yeah.
You forgive what you've been holding on to, you will release, there will be major movement. Yeah.
And, this is one for me, this has probably been the biggest lesson in working against those cultural narratives that I grew up with that were all, very Saturnian. You don't work, you don't eat, you don't, those kind of harsh realities. And so like when you embrace the idea of being generous to people, to the planet, to animals, to, when you embrace your generosity, it comes back to you. Yes, you might still get, people might still slight you in certain ways, but on the whole, as you give of yourself in a very generous way, you enhance your own kind of internal dignity, and it has a kind of snowballing effect.
Yeah, the snowballing effect of your internal dignity puts you in vibrational match with others that are doing the same. You might see decrease in conflict and crappiness, or you may see more of a decrease in not caring about it. And I'm thinking a lot about the culture wars right now, you know, and as I say that, I want to differentiate the really extreme levels of it versus the more mild levels. Like, I have friends who don't believe in the vaccination. They're not horrible people. They don't want to promote that guy that was president. They're not like racist, you know, they're super progressive, loving people that just don't believe in the vaccination. I do. I've received it. I want herd immunization. I stand for that, or like I want that, but I don't have to hate, judge those that I know and don't know that aren't like that, that don't feel that way. Like that, this would be that Jupiter Pisces energy is like, I can still say you have the right to feel that way. You know, and even if I feel threatened, because do I? Yeah, I do. I'm a human that thinks COVID can spread, but I can still say I feel threatened and I honor you.
Yeah. I mean, even if you didn't think that COVID could spread, everything's shut down. It's really hard to avoid.
And just the main point being that there's a big difference between hating and judging those that hold a different belief.
Right.
Versus disagreeing and being vulnerable enough to say, I feel threatened, and still honoring the human being. Now, again, I'm not talking about extreme bigots, racists, supporters of the guy that are just like on cloud 9 of delusion. You know, there's a certain level of psychosis or mental illness or something that takes place where there's just no love. And I still don't judge or hate those people personally, because I'm like a Neptune soul. And I have loved, forgiven, and accepted my own abusers, of which there's been more than one. That's me. That's what I follow. But I'm not going to judge people that don't follow that. You know, it's just more like radical acceptance is like, you know, for those that aren't causing all that harm. I guess what I'm trying to say is I want to be empathetic towards that struggle. At the same time, open an invitation towards you can still feel threatened and you can still disagree without judging and hating.
Right.
Judgment and hatred are not necessary to disagree and feel scared. You can just stay at, I disagree and I feel scared. You can just stay there. Like, you don't have to lose love. You don't have to cauterize your connection to love and be like, and you are less than me and you're stupid and I hate you. You don't have to go there.
Yeah, there's that kind of projection that happens when we're blaming other people because of what we're afraid of. That instead of just saying, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important lesson, is to
that's Neptune. Right. And that's Jupiter in Pisces. Like, that's Pisces. Pisces is the vulnerability to say, I feel scared, I feel threatened, I feel helpless, and I disagree. And I'm just going to stay there instead of, you know, because I still love you. I still love you. And if you don't love the person, if they're far out there, or, you know, it's like, I still love life itself and you're a part of life itself. So from this like zoomed out, detached perspective, I give love to all. And I don't want to know you and I don't want to advocate for you, but I don't have to hate you. I don't have to go into judgment and hatred because I feel so scared and upset about what I feel is happening that you're causing.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the important thing, is like, sometimes, it's really hard to, there are some people that it's going to be really, really hard and impossible to embrace the idea of loving that individual.
Yeah, it's a way tall order.
When we're talking abuse but for people closer to you, Yeah.
aren't on that severe end. I don't want to waste the podcast talking about the severe end of the
Right.
spectrum.
But the idea is like you can back out to find at least something to embrace the love instead of sitting in the fear, projecting the fear.
Well, that's the thing about, this is the thing about Pisces. It's not mental.
Right.
Love is not mental. Why do I love my abusers? Because I just do. I love everyone. I just feel it. I've always felt it. That's never been hard for me. Other things are really hard for me that people are great at that I'm crappy at. So I have my own fingerprint of crappy and gifted. But like it's just not, that love has to get cultivated, I guess is the point I want to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the more that it cultivates and the more that you feel it, the less you need to go into hatred and judgment. But you can't necessarily mentally force yourself into love. You can't be like, not going to judge, not going to hate, going to love, love, love. Like it,
right.
It doesn't really work that way. But if you do your own work, you do your own shadow work, you do your letting go, you empower, you do your own work on yourself, the love naturally gets uncovered because it's in there, or it gets developed because maybe it's never been in there, but you're learning how to cultivate it through caring for yourself. Or,
yeah. Care for yourself. Spiritual practice is another. Yeah. Just, start with things that are easier to focus love on and go from there and get yourself in a practice of loving that's not stuck in the mind where you have to.
That's the main takeaway. So we honor the bell is you can't mentally force yourself to love. Cultivate a practice or practices. And I do recognize the tall order I sometimes can come from when speaking, and glad that you were able to come in with that and like tone it down. Like just meet yourself where you're at, as like 5% more, 1% more.
Baby steps, as Bill Murray.
Baby steps to cultivate more love in your heart, more open heart.
Right.
Cleaning the heart, purifying the heart. It's a felt experience.
Mm-hmm. And on that, we're going to take baby steps towards the next podcast. So until next time, check out our websites, book readings with us, or drop us a note. Let us know, what you like about the show, what you want to talk about. We want to hear from you. Priestess Mercury podcast at gmail.com. You can leave comments in the YouTube. Until next time, we're here for you.
Lots of love and blessings.